Good evening to everybody who is joining us live via Zoom, via Facebook. A very warm welcome to each of you. We have a couple of minutes before we officially start off with the program. But before we begin, let me introduce myself. My name is Shrishma Pinto. I'll be your moderator for this conversation. And at the very outset, let me say a big thank you to all of you for joining us for this session of Why I Read. As you know, Why I Read is brought to you by Pick a Book, and I'll be happy to share with you more details on this fantastic organization in just a short while from now. Before that, of course, let me wish all of you a very happy Valentine's Day. I hope you've had a day filled with great love and maybe special memories as well from your special someone, or at least your friends. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to be able to spend this evening together, because the person I will be interviewing today leads an establishment that helps couples come together and have great conversations. It helps friends create wonderful memories. It helps families share their special moments over a cup of coffee. So I think it's very timely that we have this particular guest on our event and our segment here today. We will give a couple of more seconds for many more of you to join in. I see we have a few guests on Zoom and some of you joining us live on Facebook. Let me also remind you, all of you, that we would love to hear your questions for our guests today. So if you do have questions, keep them in mind and be ready to type it in the Q&A box. And I will be very happy to address your questions to our guest this evening. So with that, I hope you're having a fantastic evening so far. Perhaps as we wait for a couple of more people to join, if there are any of you here who have been reading something interesting, feel free to drop it in the comments right now. I'd like to see what everybody has been reading lately. So for all the guests who are joining us, what have you been reading lately? Share it in the comments and let everybody know if you found a fantastic book, a great author. Let us know about that. And we'll wait for a few more minutes for us to officially start live on Zoom and on Facebook as well. All right, so we have a guest here who's reading The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. And as I have noticed, this seems to be an extremely important, popular book. It's a book that I love myself, and a very popular with all of the members of Pick a Book as well. So that's a fantastic selection there. Are there anybody else reading something interesting that you'd like to share with us? Any authors that we need to know about? You have a couple of more minutes to go before we start live. Well, maybe we can talk about books related to relationships, since that seems to be the theme of the day, Valentine's Day. There have been quite a few interesting books I have read on the topic, including a book called The 5 Love Languages. Maybe you've heard about that. There's another very famous book called Love by Leo Buscaglia. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, but that's been a favorite of mine as well. So those are 2 books that I would recommend for all of you who are looking to enhance your relationships with special people in your life. So let me know what you're reading. I'd love to hear from you. All right, I am extremely excited to be ready to begin our session today. So without further ado, let me warmly welcome each of you. My name once again is Shrishma Pinto. I'm your moderator for this conversation, and a big thank you to all of you for joining us here on Valentine's Day evening for this special segment of Why I Read, brought to you by Pick a Book. Now, as all of you already know, this evening we have a brilliant, young and dynamic corporate leader joining us on this segment. Dilupa Pathirana is here with us today, and I can't wait for all of us to learn from his expertise and his experience. But before I officially introduce him to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, let me take this opportunity to introduce you first and foremost to Pick a Book, which is the host for this conversation. So if you're new to Pick a Book is this initiative that was launched with the aim of igniting a love and a passion for reading and for books and for knowledge. And it has several clubs in various cities across the globe, and it's widely expanding very quickly. It's a space where Readers can select their book, they can read it, research it, present their findings as a summary before an audience. And in doing so, Pick a Book not just encourages its readers to be able to inculcate the habit of reading, but it also encourages its members to impart a wealth of knowledge while honing our readers' communication skills. So that is a brief background to what Pick a Book is doing through its various clubs across this island as well as across the globe. And our discussion today, ladies and gentlemen, which is called Why I Read, is a Pick a Book initiative that successfully engages individuals and personalities in a conversation, asking them to share with us how reading has helped them to grow, how reading has helped them achieve greatness in both their personal lives as well as their professional lives. And we hope that our discussion today with a very interesting corporate leader will help all of you be encouraged in your own pursuit for learning, for growth, and self-development. Now, of course, let me once again remind all of you, if you have questions for our guest today, feel free to use the Q&A feature on this conference platform and submit your questions. We will be delighted to present your question before our guest. And also, as the discussion progresses, as the conversation progresses, feel free to actively share your thoughts with us with regard to what we're talking about. So don't be shy to let us know what you think in the chat box while the session is in progress. So with that, let me now finally introduce to you our fascinating guest here this evening. Like I said before, especially since it's Valentine's Day today, it might interest you to know that the establishment that our guest leads, which is Barista Coffee Lanka, has a very key role to play in bringing friends together, in bringing couples together, in making conversation happen, in creating wonderful, wonderful memories. And so it's a timely day to bring our guest onto this special segment today. Our guest is Dilupa Pathirana. He is the CEO of Barista Coffee Lanka, and he has previously been head of operations at Ceylon Hotel Corporation, as well as category manager at Lion Brewery Ceylon PLC. Now, I've had the pleasure of speaking to Dilupa before, and I have found him to have an immense love for learning, a greater love for unlearning, as well as a true passion to keep upgrading his skills and developing his potential. So I'm sure we're all in for a very interesting conversation today. So on that note, let me now warmly welcome Dilupa to join in the conversation. Welcome, Dilupa.
Thank you. Okay. Sorry. Thank you so much. And it's good to be here.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you for inviting me. And I'm very excited and nervous to share a little bit I know about reading and how it had helped me in the way.
Fantastic. Now, we do know you have a very interesting story, a very intriguing background as well. So let me start off by asking you the first and the most obvious question. And that question is, why do you read, Dilupa? And how has reading shaped you as a person and as a corporate leader that you are today?
Well, to answer that question very simply, just the fact that I can, read letters. And I want to get that advantage over a person who can't read letters. So if you really can read letters and you don't read, there's no difference between you and an illiterate person. So it's the very fact that I want to keep, and I think everybody should read. If you can really read the letters, you really have to read. Second thing is, the second part of the question you were asking about how it had reshaped me as a person and as a corporate leader. I would rather say it really didn't shape me as a corporate leader. Why I'll tell you that, because reading will only probably shape you as a person. You are a person and you get yourself reshaped by reading, and then you play when you're paid to do that role of corporate leader. It can be today, tomorrow I'll be again somebody who's in the normal society. So I think somebody has to read with the clear purpose of shaping yourself inner self and become a better person than what you were before. So I think like I read to shape myself, and I don't say that it did not help me out being a corporate leader, but I really don't read to shape me as a corporate leader. And to give you a in-depth answer about why I read. And I was also thinking, because the very topic of this whole conversation is why we read. So why I read. So I was thinking in the lines of why I read. I then realized I read for two reasons. Number one is to learn myself, and number two is to unlearn myself. I think both learning and unlearning is equally important in the process of, making you a better person. Yeah.
Wow, that's a very interesting answer. I know you have a passion for reading, but unlearning, that's quite intriguing. We'll talk a little bit more about unlearning a little later. But for now, let me also ask you, how did you begin with this habit of reading? How old were you when you first picked up your book, and who influenced you to start on this journey towards reading?
Well, I was a very late reader. I would say I was a very late learner, to be very frank with you. It's a funny story. I had a problem of comprehending things and also processing information when I was small. Then I still remember when I was in the last semester of the second grade, my school teacher called my mother, and my mother went to the school, and she said, she was very fair. She said, this particular boy needs special attention education, and I will not be able to send him to this third grade because I was actually horrible in my studies. At the same time, I was aggressive and I was not, behaving properly also. So at that point, my mom was helpless, and to the rescue, there was a monk next to our house, because my house was next to the temple. And that Thero is also a student of the university who was learning psychology. And then he had been seeing me growing up all this time. When I was 7 years old, I couldn't read or properly write things. So then he took me, and he was also a teacher of that particular school. So he went to my teacher and, bought some time for me. And then after school, I used to go to the temple from 2 to 6 o'clock. I was, starting studying. The very little things that he used, I remember he gave me he put some flowers and he asked me to collect, red color flowers to one basket and white colors to flowers to a different basket, and then put all the lanterns to the rackets properly. And then he wrote big letters on the sand floor, and then I have to put flowers or stones on that. And then he slowly reduced the size of the frame that I can write something on the book. And he worked so hard on me, and never gave it up. And I'm grateful to him to what I am today. And to cut the whole thing short, in the five-year scholarship exam, I got through this exam as well, but I didn't have a lot of good marks to go to a good school like Anand and Alandu Royal, but still I got through with 150 marks. So it was very fast learning from year third to year 5. And then during that time only I catch up, start reading things, because I couldn't read up to that point. And thereafter I read everything that came to me, every little thing that come my way, I used to read. And I remember my mom used to read a women's magazine, and that she kept it in her cupboard. So I used to one day got that magazine and read the whole magazine, about 3 magazines before she came home. And then I was asking all these weird questions from her. And from that day, mother didn't bring that magazine to our house. Right? Likewise. So I used to, that is how I started reading. And then after I got into my universities, and then the whole, workload come to play, then I realized I can't be reading everything. But up to, I think, my university, I used to read a lot of books. Mainly what I read now is literature books. And then I read my subject knowledge book. My literature book reading is basically, I think, 95% on Sinhala, because that is the most convenient language to me. And then all my subject books are written in English, like branding, marketing, communication, consumer behavior, and business development, things like that, human resource management, that I have to read in English. So I read all, that is how I got into actually reading, and that is how I've been reading right now also. It was interesting.
Okay, that's a very, very actually interesting experience because, and also I should say it's so inspiring right up front to know that, you yourself said you're a late bloomer. You got into all of this quite late by, relative standards. But see, today you are here at the head of an organization. So I think very clearly it shows everybody who's listening that a late bloomer or a late start does not define where you end up. You can still change tracks and you can still grow through it all. So that's quite inspiring right there at the beginning. So now I want to ask you about your concept of unlearning. Now we all know that we read to learn, but you're saying we need to read to unlearn. What does that mean?
Well, I think the most important aspect of our, knowledge gathering is unlearning things. It is not a new thing, right? If you really look at yourself, like I'm being now almost 40, and during the first 6 years of my learning, the first 6 years of our learning as a child, we learned quite a lot of things, right? We learned everything. We learned about the sky, we learned about the food, we learned about fire. And then during the last 6 years of your life, what actually you really, learned, that is where the unlearning has to come to play, because we, as a kid, we are ready to unlearn ourselves and learn new things. But this happens when you grow older with some degrees in your hand and with some, experience, corporate experience with you, and then also with some masters and, maybe professional examinations. And it become very difficult for you to unlearn things that you learn. It is not actually the ego of you learning, but mostly it's about ego, right? So you do not like to let go things that you learned. And when that happens to you, there's no space for new knowledge. So that is why I think it is very important to unlearn ourselves, as much as possible, so that there is space for us to go and search for new learning. Now, when you come to a certain point of your life, the most difficult thing in the life is to stay uneducated, right? Because you are already with your assumptions and presumptions. And if you go to take any decisions on your life, you bring all your assumptions and presumptions that comes with your education and experience. And let me tell you, mine are mostly wrong all the time. My assumptions or presumptions are, quite wrong, right? So probably somebody is very good at, their assumptions and presumptions, but I think there is a risk, right? So in my room, also in my organization, I have a saying, that is the only thing that I have. I said, before you assume, try this amazing method called asking, right? So that is what happens to me most of the time when I work with my colleagues and when I work with my subordinates. They really assume things that I will be upset, or I will go mad, or I will think that's a silly question. So mostly they come with a lot of assumptions, but I always say, do not come with assumptions, just come and ask what we can do. So that the same thing in your career, in your life also, you need to, before you assume things, you need to really ask. So how reading helps me to unlearn. Whenever I get a book in my hand, when I read something, when I absolutely read, when I read the knowledge, like my subject knowledge books, it really, bring me, it really erase my ego, and it really bring me down to say, like, hey, Dilupa, what you have learned, no, this is new learning. Think people, do things, how much research they have done, what you have done. And that keeps me, always, I feel like I have to read more, I have to learn more, I have to be humble. I don't know much. So that is the unlearning thing. That is how it helps us. And if you always think that your vessel is filled, it is very difficult to, refill it with new knowledge. That is what I meant by unlearning.
Yeah, that's quite fascinating. I like what you said, that, you should be eager to learn and not have an ego to learn. That was a great line. And I also loved how you said that, it's so hard to be uneducated these days. And I think that's so true because, with all of the media, all of the bombardment of information that we have, it really is hard to be uneducated, uninformed, but we still have to keep our vessels open for us to not assume and to be able to take in new information. So That's great. That's lovely insight right there. Let me also ask you, Dilupa, what kind of books do you like to read? What's your favorite type of book?
Well, see, as I told you, I was a late reader, and then I used to read everything that come handy, like, everything which is nearby. I used to read, and I need to tell you this also. I could not read English till I am getting into my university, because I was always, my inner circle and outer cycle was always like, Sinhala speaking, Sinhala reading culture. And that was my fault, that I didn't really realize why we really need a second language. So until I get into the University of Jawaharlal, then I realized, okay, this is not a time that they test your knowledge, but probably the language first, because I used to learn 13 years of economics, accounting, and business studies in my own language, and all of a sudden I have to, switch to a different language to learn the same thing. So it was a matter of, learning a new language versus learning new knowledge. And most of us in our university, I would say like 50% or maybe even more than that face the same, problem. The people are from different part of Sri Lanka. I mean, I have to be blamed myself, because I was in at least Western province, but there are some people who never had an English teacher in their life for the last 13 years of knowledge, but then jumped into the university, and all of a sudden the whole, this language barrier came to play. But I initially, the first 2 years, it was a struggle of, learning a new language. So that is why I initially also told you that my reading is mostly subject knowledge. Subject knowledge is always gained by English, but I always prefer to read literature through my mother language, which is Sinhala, that I can digest more. I can really feel what it is written. So all the good books that was written in the history of mankind that was translated to Sinhala, I think I have read it. So my reading is two types. As I told you, I read literature mostly in my own language, and then I read the subject knowledge through my through English, and mostly it's about branding and management.
All right, so mostly branding and management in English, and then literature in Sinhala. That's great. We do have a few questions coming in. So at this point, I would like to once again remind all of our participants who are right here on the call, feel free to send in your questions to Dilupa. He's got a fascinating story, and I'm sure you'd love to learn how he leads this fantastic organization that today he's the CEO of. He's the CEO of Barista in Sri Lanka. So I'm sure you want to know more about his leadership secrets, his strategies, and how he keeps learning and keeps himself relevant. So send in your questions. We do have questions coming in already, so that's great. Before I move into the audience questions, Dilupa, you do have a few books with you that you'd like to show us. So would you like to show us a few of the books that you have with you right now? Some favorites that you would like to showcase to our audience?
Yes, I have a lot of books. Like, I read a lot, and I used to borrow books and read, but now I don't find times to go to libraries. So mostly it's online buying is happening. I buy a lot of books. One thing that I really needed to tell you last time in the last question, right now, like, I used to read, but about 5 to 6 years back, I have stopped reading about motivational books and leadership books, because it adds a lot of pressure to me. It adds stress to me also, because it always talk about, being great on someone else's perspective. I always think being great, you can do anything and be great about it. And, you can do any little things and be proud about it. If you really take an example of what we do, like, we have very young team of 14 people. Now it's about 19 people in our head office. We are simply making coffee. Like, everybody can make coffee. But if there's no groundbreaking business, there's no rocket science, there's no big theories or good money involved, also big money involved. But we 15 of us, we are very passionate. We put everything into our coffee. And during the last 3 years, with East attack, with COVID, with all these difficulties, we made This is the biggest cafe chain in Sri Lanka, and we are twice bigger than our competition. And we have best sales of the history last month also, and then the best profit and all that. It's a very simple thing. It's just making a cup of coffee. I mean, so when I tried reading all these motivations and leadership stuff, it says like, some school of thoughts, and then you really have to do it. But, things, you can skin a cat in many different ways, like, then you have to find your own way. But what I really want is to educate myself in all the theories, like all the subject areas, so that we can probably find our own unique way of success. So that is something that I do, but I'm not suggesting not to read any kind of, motivational books, but this is how I do. Like, since you asked what kind of books that I read. So I read literature books a lot, and also, knowledge material books. Yes.
All right. So would you like to show us a few of the books that you have with you right now?
I have a book. Actually, this book, I consider this book as my, test book after I joined Barista. This is Onwards, written by Howard. He's the CEO of Starbucks. It's the biggest cafe chain in the world. And this is about how he went through the recession in 2008. And he was a director of the organization, and then he stepped down as a CEO to the organization, and how he changed the whole business and how it is built over the recession. So this book, actually, I bought it in 2018, and then I start slowly reading. But since in 2020, when the pandemic hit, I sat down about 3 days, and I start really reading like a test book, like, when you have an exam. That is how this book is written, like with all these, notes and, highlighted stuff. And that gave me a lot of insights and a lot of theories that how he had helped the business and the brand to, get over that kind of a difficult situation. Though the situation is different versus economic recession versus COVID pandemic. Right now, after the COVID, we are now again getting into a kind of economic recession. So he had given the way that he had, maneuver this business over that recession. So that helped me a lot. And then I normally read, like these days, I read another book called Strategic Brand Management from Kevin Keller. This is the 5th edition. This is the newest edition that we got. And he's talking a lot of, brand building stuff in that. It's about how to evaluate a brand more than how to build and design a brand. He's talking about the evaluation part of it, which is very rare mostly in branding and marketing, textbooks. So he's bringing out models how to evaluate the equity. Most of the time, equity is something that we always say it's cognitive, like, it's how you, evaluate in your emotional, not in functional benefit, but in emotional benefit. But then he's bringing all the models to measure how the emotional benefits or emotional equity can be measured. So, which is something very interesting, which is very new to the industry also that I read. And then I read this book also. This is Ratna Sri Vijay Singh. This is a poetry collection, Vassaning Pasu. Then I read a lot of Sinhala books, as I told you, for Sahitya. Those are the books that I currently find and I currently read.
Do you have any favorite quotations from your books that you'd like to share with us? Any highlighted passages or anything like that? Anything you remember from the top of your mind?
Yeah, the best quotation that I've got is from Dhammapada. I used to read Dhammapada, and that is a book that I wanted to show you. Like I read that book, and we have it in Sinhala also. And then I wanted to have the English version of it. So I'm not saying I read it every day, but every now and then I wanted to jump into this. I jumped in, but not in a religious purpose, but also it's more good advices, I would say. He in the 62nd Gatha, it says, but it's in Pali though. It says, Uttamati Dhanamati Nati Balo Vijanyati Attahi Attanonati Kuto putta kuto dana. Just to say, I have sons, I have wealth. Thus is a fool troubled. When you don't have yourself to yours, where is your sons and where is your wealth? Where are your sons and where are your wealth? So it just reminds me that, it's everything is not permanent, that you need to, battle it through and be a good person every day when it's come to life. The second good quotation that I remember, I would say, I read a book long ago, Mahalla and Mahamuhuda. That's a very famous novel called The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. He's an American author. And I really liked that book. I read it when I was 16, 17, but recently I really wanted to read the English version of it. So I have the Sinhala book also. Then I got the English version and I start reading it. I really like the fact that book brings, no matter how hard the battle is, you really need to battle it through. And that is life. And it shows it shows how a matured person would, face the world, and how the story goes as that there was an old fisherman. He was without a fish for 84 days. And the 85th day, he catches the best fish in the sea. And he was a huge one. He catches it for about 3 days. He was struggling with the fish and he was about to die because, that fish is also never, like, he was a guy who didn't give up. And then finally he won, and then he could not get the fish into his boat. And then he has to drag the fish on the sea with the boat alone. Right. And then he was always he was so proud that he got the best fish in the sea. I think this book is, read by everyone. I think, I'm just repeating. But the sad thing is when he reaches the shore, the other fish of the sea has completely eaten the whole fish. And he came to the shore with nothing. So it's a beautifully written story, and it gives a lot of courage, and it really relieves the real life of a person. Right. And in that he says, every day is a new day. It's better to be lucky, but I would rather like to be exact. So when the luck finds me, I'm ready. So that was a quote that always gave me courage during the COVID period of time. Right? Every micro and macro economic and all the environment factors were against us. Right? I was asked to sell a cup of coffee, which is a premium experience, and we sell it at 600 rupees. And my customers were asked not to step out from their houses, and they're locked down in our houses. And we were asked to completely close our doors for our customers. But still, we were asked to sell a cup of coffee, which is a premium experience. And what we sell? We're not only selling the coffee, but we sell the whole experience, the ambience, the service, the people, the car park, the cushion, like the furniture, everything. At that time also, I was telling my friends, things will not be the same. Luck will come our way, but be exact. We have to be ready to try to do everything which is good, thinking about future, get ready for that. Even the darkest, times, you would find something that you have to hang on to it, and then, you have to get yourself out of. So that was something that I really admired in the book of The Old Man and the Sea. And it is very encouraging book, I would say. It gives a lot of, enthusiasm to life. He says, man cannot be defeated. He can only be destroyed, right? You can't be defeated. You can be only destroyed. So things like that, So I really like those quotes from those two books. And there are a lot of quotes from Dhammapada if you want to, get yourself as inspired.
I remember you said you had one of your very favorite books, which is quite an interesting pick. Do you want to talk to us about that?
Yeah. Yes. My most interesting book of my life and the most useful book of my life is my dictionary, the Malala Sekara dictionary. That I think I admired that book the most, because when I was learning the new language, when that was very, very late, when I was 21-year-old, At 21 years old, I started actually, putting myself into English. It also happens in a funny way. Like I started like, my career was all trial and error method. Like I started my O levels without knowing what we would be doing for A levels. Then I went for maths class for about 1 month. Then I realized maths is not for me because I was not ready for that. I was not, smart for that. And then I started doing commerce. And then commerce, I went through the A levels and got selected to the Jayawardena University. And at that time, if somebody had done commerce, they have to do charter. That is how it was, framed. So I started doing chartered, and then I again realized in the middle of the way that chartered is not for me. It's very difficult, and it's not something that I didn't find interesting for me. And then at that point, the university in our university, they taught us a subject called marketing management. And then I found this is a very interesting thing. Though I was not very good at English, I thought, but at that time, the assumption was, this is for people who can speak English. You have to do presentations. There are a lot of presentations. Marketing is for people who really speak good English. And then I realized, but I really love the fact that it was, it was taught to us like about consumer behavior, the marketing mix, and then segmenting, targeting, and positioning. Those are very interesting. So I decided to do CIM. I decided to pursue my career in marketing when I was almost 23, and then started my CIM classes. And I remember the CIM classes the first day, when the lecturer was saying expectation, I was wondering whether it starts with A or E kind of a situation, right? And then from there, I started, reading. I mean, I have read the Malala Sekara dictionary. It's not, I referred the book. I have read that book. And then I had another book of my own version of dictionary, which I found, which I thought that this particular word would, help me out in future. So I used to have a shorter version of a dictionary, which was done by myself in my own handwriting. And now it is used by my son. And the dictionary is also used by him, and he has taken it and gone to my wife's house. Otherwise, I should have shown you, like, it's like that old and that used.
Fantastic. So, I mean, that's very interesting, to have read the dictionary. It's not just a reference. You read it. You actually used it, and it has been very, very useful to you. Now, we do have a few questions coming in. Once again, I'd like to remind all of the attendees on this conversation, feel free to write in your questions for Dilupa. We'd like to have his opinion on what you think. So, we've talked a lot about books, Dilupa, but let's now talk about your journey from somebody who could not speak English at the age of 21 to today being, at the helm of a very, very famous organization. So tell us about how your reading journey has actually helped you in becoming a CEO today.
All right. Well, my career, it was very linear, I would say. There's no very exciting story that I can, share about it. When you are 23 and when you didn't know where to go in your life, and all the other students around you in my university, even at that time, was, we are very focused and they have come a long way. And I was always a late starter, right? And then to the office also work, I was a very late starter. I started working when I was 26 years old. And I started as an brand assistant at Unilever's. And then I was a brand executive at Sri Lanka Insurance, and then a brand manager at Asian Airlines Insurance. So that period, I was a insurance guy who was, marketing insurance and service related products. And then I got a different industry. I got into a different industry, FMCG, but it's alcohol. It's Lion Breweries. So at Lion Breweries, I worked about 5 years there. I started as a marketing and activation manager. And then I became a category manager at Lion Brewery. When I left Lion Brewery, I was a category manager. And then I joined into Ceylon Hotel Corporation as a head of marketing and operations. So there I worked about 4 years, and then I got a chance to work with Barista, and I joined it as a general manager Barista. And recently I was promoted as a CEO of Barista. So if you take the career, it is pretty much a linear career and also very marketing focused, brand focused career. I was not into different places. There's nothing more exciting about it. But still, what is exciting is how I would say, I don't say I progress, but how I really battle the way through with kind of new knowledge, I would say. Because there's a funny thing, like, about 2 years ago, our university friends of our university faculty, we got together for a beer. It was about 14 of us who were around, and we were talking about things that we learned. And mostly it was the things that we were talking about, how much stuff that we learned and how much we really remember. And when I said we had 40 subjects during 4 years, that was argued too, that was even argued, like, did we do 40 subjects? Was it 36 or 35? Right? So even number of subjects were not very clear about it. Then don't ask me what we have really learned. And then I said, okay, fine, I will pay the whole bill if somebody can tell me the 40 subjects. I'm pretty sure that I did 40 subjects. If somebody can tell me all the 40 subjects that we learned, I'll pay the whole bill. That was a pretty big bill at that time, around 11:39. But everybody tried their best. We could go up to 28 subjects. That was all we could got. And then I came back to home and checked the other 12 subjects. Yes, we have done 40 subjects. But the thing is, that never had gone waste, to be very frank with you. What you really need to learn in your life in the early 25s to 30 is how to learn a new thing, how to learn with a lot of difficulties, how to learn with pressure. That is what we were taught at University of Javadan. That is what that is what everybody should learn. Because what you learn today is not absolutely relevant within another 2 years' time. Right? So if you have learned the way of learning, then that will help you to learn new things. Frankly, we were not taught about brand management when I have a first class degree at Javadan University. But we were never taught about brand management. But I have been in the career of brand management after I left the university. Right? So if I don't read and learn brand management through my way, then my career would have been a disaster. So what I think, if there's young guys who are listening to us, or maybe somebody who's at any age, what we really need to learn is how to learn things. In your university, when you do assignment, when you do new things. I used to remember there was another story that my father passed away when I was in the third year of the university. At that time, third year, we have to fully engaged in our examinations and engaged in our education. So the lectures were full time and all that. But I had to start working for Unilever because I have to help my mother. So I could not go to the final semester of third year, and from there onward, I could not, because I was actually not as a trainee, working as a trainee. I was actually a permanent worker. So all the benefits that a trainee would get in terms of study leaves and all that was not given to me. So I was like in full-time work. So I could not go to actually physically to the university for the last 1.5 years. But what I did was, it was with a lot of difficulties to bring the notes and, find somehow time to manage the education. So, but I got through also with the first class, and yeah, we had good marks. What I really learned is, how to learn a subject completely new, right? Probably without your assistant, without someone's assistant. You refer books, you get books, you write your own, tudes and stuff like that. So I think that actually helped me coming out of questions, also coming out of situations. Maybe I handled situations well, probably I, came through my career, probably that. And maybe I go and talk to how I talk to my interviews, because I've read a lot. If I was, confined to what I read only on, marketing, then probably I couldn't be a general manager, like, jack of all trade, master of none kind of situation. That you have to know though, right? And as a CEO also, I have to bring an answer to any question. It can be procurement, it can be IT, it can be finance, it can be, anything like distribution, procurement, supply chain, everything comes, particularly these days. So everybody comes to me with an answer. I can't be saying like, let's think about it, or maybe let's talk about it, or maybe we'll pass it to someone for an opinion. That's the curse that comes with big position, you have to have an answer for everyone. So for you to do that, you need to probably know I'm not saying everything. Probably you have to, associate a lot of different, subjects. So that is only taken through through reading. That is what I do. Yeah, and I think that is how it helped me.
Okay, you have already talked about how in the course of your journey as CEO, you were in the midst of all of the challenges. And we do have a question here from one of our participants on the call who is asking, what was your biggest challenge and how did you face or overcome it? So what do you have to say? I know you spoke about the pandemic and all of that, but what was your biggest challenge and how did you overcome it?
My biggest challenge, I think, as a human being, or as a human being, my biggest challenge, I think till I die, would be how I make myself better than yesterday. That is the biggest challenge. It is very, very difficult for you to benchmark anything. You can't benchmark people because we really don't know what they are going through. There can be great people just not having proper opportunity. I know I'm not the best CEO for Barista, but somehow I got through, right? I really can't, benchmark myself or my challenge over other challenge or someone else's. Your challenge has to be within you. You have to be a better human being. That is the most important thing. Don't think about, I'm not thinking about being the best CEO. I'm trying to be like, the best boss to someone, which is something that I have a challenge, like, how I can become better than what I was yesterday. And for you to do that, I think reading is very, very important. You be humble, you learn new things, you unlearn things, and you learn from everyone that come your way. It's not only reading, it reads the people, reads the emotions of people. And when you work with others, it always think like, how I can grab something, how I can grab something from them that I don't have. So my challenge, as I told you, to be a better person. And if you really ask me, to stay uneducated. I have learned crazy things from my team. Like I have a 22-year-old engineer, a maintenance guy who came to work as a maintenance assistant. His complete job was to fix the taps which are leaking and maybe clean the roofs that are blocking, things like that. But I really saw that guy was absolutely passionate and bring a lot of solutions in different ways. And now you won't believe, within two years time, he's the one who designs art outlets for us. He's the one who lay out all the outlets for Barista. And we used to pay 150,000, 200,000 for outside engineers for just to lay out an outlet. And I learned a lot from him, like, how every little chance that he was given, he come out like, shining. Every pressure that I put on him, he came out like a diamond, right? Things like that. So my biggest challenge is like, there are so many, probably in my office, there are people look up to me and say, he will give me an answer. So I always want to be a better boss to him. And I always want to be a better human to my friends, my wife, my son, and everybody around me. That is my biggest challenge. And I always have fear that I am going to fail in that. So that fear, always push me, you have to do better. Yeah.
Wow, that's an interesting answer, because I think it's a challenge that all of us go through, at least most of us, a challenge to be better than who we were yesterday. And I think our audience is actually enjoying this conversation, because I can see there's a comment here for you, Dilupa. One of our guests is saying that you are a highly intelligent and humble human being, and we need more people like this. So there you go. That's appreciation for you right there. And I'm sure your colleagues, your subordinates, your team all probably believes and thinks the same as well. Let me once again remind our audience, we would love to hear from you. We'd love your questions. If you want to know anything about Dilupa's leadership style or how he manages to grow Barista to the success that it is today, please feel free to send in your questions, and we'll be happy to pose those questions to Dilupa. Meanwhile, while we wait for your questions, I will ask Dilupa another question. And my question to you now, Dilupa, is how can you help encourage somebody to pick up the habit of reading, what advice would you give to somebody who has never read before and would like to start, or would like to get somebody in their, close circle to start reading? What advice would you have for them?
Well, my first advice is to just take a book and read it, right? I'll tell you why. Because it's reading is absolutely an extremely difficult discipline nowadays. It's absolutely difficult discipline to practice these days, especially. And I remember when I used to read books like all single big books, I take that book, go to my room with a packet of cream cracker, maybe a couple of cheese slices, and then I finished that book when I was young, like 16 years, 17 years old, when the school vacations and all. But think about a 16-year-old, 17-year-old student today. How many times he's disturbed with all these, problems around with them, like with what this brings you daily, this thing, right? Your social media, your Instagram, your Facebook, you are always wanting to be, you are always wanted, and you always wanted to be in the scene, right? And it was researched and found out a young man, they call like 16 to 25 years old, unlocks the smartphone 175 times average a day, right? And that is the amount of time that you'll be disturbed for something, So with that difficulty, if you have if you want to get into the habit of reading, you really want to work yourself out, get a book, have a coffee, probably keep away your phone if you can, or start reading. Like how I read is late night after 10 or at 5:30 or 5 o'clock to 7. That is the least disturbed time of my schedule, probably, so that I can, concentrate reading. So what my suggestion is to you is to start reading. Make reading an interesting part of you first. That is the important thing. You have to fall in love with reading first, and then find what interests you to read after that. But if you are trying to read what is interesting to you, I think that will take more time. Because when you search only, you will find what kind of reading would suit me. But what I'm saying, read anything that, keeps you good. Like that is how I read. That's what I told you. Like I was very interesting to read all these women's magazine. And I had some crazy things when I was like 11-year-old, and I had read all the unwanted stuff. And then I was asking questions from my mom, right? So the same thing happened to my son. Very same thing, because I also knew it has to be a genetical thing also. It's the disorder that I had was dyslexia. That was a disorder. I actually felt that had to come to my son also. I hope that you have watched that movie called Thare Samipar that was done by Amir Khan. Yes. Yeah, so pretty much similar kind of situation that I was in. So I thought my son would be the same. So I knew, like those days in 1988, I was just a stupid student. But now it is different. Like we know what is happening. So I was guiding him that he shouldn't be like that. So my wife is also it's not working. She's full-time into him, and I was also watching him grow. But one thing I wanted him to do is to read. Right, I got him to read anything he likes. So he started asking like Wimpy Kids. I think that book was not a recommended book to read, but that is how he started reading. So he likes Wimpy Kids. So I got the whole series of Wimpy Kids, and then this fellow took the book to his school, and then the teacher called me and it was like a big thing. The teacher called me and my wife also, and then she was like saying this book is not recommended to read, and why she's reading. So I said it's the only thing that he reads. So I initially wanted him to read first and, like reading and get the discipline of reading. And slowly I converted him to read good, technically okay books. And now he read all the series, and now he's getting into big books, and its language is okay. I think he's better than what I was at his age. Is far more better than what I was in his age. So I think if you really want to do any habit, one thing you want to have is the commitment that I really want it done, and I really want to put myself into this and, get through. That is what you really have to do.
I think a lot of people have echoed that, if you want to start reading, start with something that you like. And I think the interest for the subject will then probably interest you in the habit as well of reading. Yeah, so I think a lot of people start off like that, by reading what they like and then developing the habit a little later. Well, we do have another question here. Actually, somebody has asked, how should we motivate kids to read? And I think that question has just been answered. Shabiha has asked that question. I think you just answered that question.
I'll tell you one thing. No, I have an answer for that.
Okay.
You start reading with them. That is the best way. You have to show that you are also an interesting reader.
Yes.
You read with them. You take a book of yours and you read with them. That is what I used to do. And that is why I still do. I get him to read with me, and he reads his books and I read my book. And, have a culture in your home that all the time he's equipped with the dialogue TV, the ground floor, up floor, the mobile phones, the tabs and all that. Just be like, very traditional and very outdated for some time. That is what I'm saying. At home, take the physical book, go somewhere, have a coffee. And he also like that, the whole feeling, like with a coffee or a cup, something to eat with them, and then just enjoying that, free time. And I think it is absolutely important for younger, because reading is imagination, right? When you read, not like you're watching a cartoon, not like you're watching a TV, you just have to build your own story, build your own, surrounding with you. So according to what is written, he will build his own jungles, he will build his own caves, he will build his own waterfalls. And that creativity, I think that creativity, it comes in any language. And even if he's okay with Sinhala, let him read in Sinhala. And he also reads Sinhala, but he mostly now read English. But I am then and there checking his, imaginations, but asking him to write something that you felt or most, interesting part of this book, put into a, picture, put into a, some painting. And then he does like some crazy paintings. He come up with like some crazy, animals, and, that is how we started. But now I know that he processes information much faster. He thinks much faster as a result of, getting the habits of reading. But one thing you want to do is you have to read with them. You really have to do that.
Yeah, I like that, because whatever culture the family has, the children take it on, so if they see their parents are reading, if the parents sit down with the children and read and show them that it's exciting, it's interesting, I think the children tend to take after their parents in that way. So that's a great answer. Yeah, create a culture for learning and be with them as they're reading. So I hope that answers your question to Shabiha, who asked Shabiha. Yes. Well, we do have a few more questions, and we have very limited time, so let's hope we can finish this off. We have a question here asking, what was the start of the Barista franchise and what inspired you? Are you a coffee lover or are you a foodie?
Okay, that's a good question. I'll be very honest with you. Like, I probably lose the credibility of being the CEO of Barista, but I really don't love coffee.
Okay.
That's a funny thing to say. I really didn't like coffee. I would say that. But the real truth was when now this is a good story. When I joined, I applied for Barista. It was a position of CEO, frankly. That was what it was interviewed, advertised. So I sent my CV. I was 35 that time. And I never thought that I was even called, but I was called for the interview. And then I faced the interview. And I think I faced it probably well. Then I was called for the second interview as well. And you won't believe there's only one time that I stepped into Barista before that. Just one time. And that was also a mistake. That I thought I could find something, interesting there, but I couldn't. And actually I did. And it was way back. I remember I'll tell you that story, which is interesting story. It could be irony of fate also. Soon after my university, I was searching for job before I joined Unilever. I was, sending applications. So there was one interview that I had in the roads of Horton's place, like where the coffee bean, big coffee bean was before. That interview was next to coffee bean. There was a insurance company. I went as I applied for insurance advisor. That day, it's like insurance agent was the job. And then I went to the interview and I didn't find it interesting because it was more to sales than marketing. But those days when I say advice, I thought it's like a consulting thing that, but it was actually selling. Right. So I was not interested. I was thinking, I wasted my money also. I had little money in my hand those days. And then I stepped into Barista. There was another thing that I was very hungry. I went into Barista, and when you go into Barista, even today it's the same, you are welcomed, you are given a very warm welcome, and you can't really come down. And I went into the FDU, and I saw it is not my place. Now I have to get out quickly. And then, but I couldn't, because that was all, around me. They looked at me, the eye contact, everything that we've taught. And they did it fantastic that I have to buy something. So there's only one thing that I could buy for less than 500 rupee. That was a mutton roll or something. That was 400 rupee at that time, right? I could not have any coffee because coffees are 600 plus. And then I got that roll and I sat and ate, and I thought, I will never come to why the hell is this roll? Is this 400 rupees? That was the first thing, the impressions. After that, even though I grew into a category manager, probably I could afford it, but I always found 2 bottles of beer is interesting than 1 cup of coffee at that price, So I was not a coffee lover when I started. And then the question from my directors, they were like elderly gentlemen, they were saying Dilupa, we wanted some gray hair and some experience. This is a CEO's position. And I want some experience, you have come to the second interview, but we have about 3 people that we have to choose from someone out. All the other gentlemen, they have 15 years, 20 years of experience in, cafe and food related business. But you have only about 4 years of experience in 3.5 years experience in hotel corporation, which is also not, a cafe kind of operation. Then I said, look, sir, if you are looking for 15 years experience, then I have to come to this interview after another 10 years time, because I have only 5 years experience. But probably that experience could be 2 years experience repeated 10 times. It's 20 years experience, right? So what would you like to do? I am a quick learner. If you see my career also, you would see I've come very quickly and I've learned, and I have an education, and also I have learned the way of learning new things. So you have to try me out, and that is how it works, right? I was fearless because I didn't have much pressure to find that job either. And then I came and I realized what kind of mentality of the director board also, because they are also wanted to be very sure of what they are going to give their business to whom they are going to give their business into. And then suddenly I got a call and I said, they said I was selected. So then I said, okay, fine. So now it's a new challenge. I have to go and, get it now. And I went into the business also. It was also in a very wobbly situation. We had only 6 outlets. The outlets are making losses. The food cost was about 45%. Now, if you are to say what it is right now, it's about 33%. So the food cost is the cost of food of your sales, right? And so we had 6 outlets. Now we have 14 outlets. We've won continuously the LMD customer service awards. We are the fastest growing thing, and we are the best franchise for Barista in the region. And it's all because only one thing, that I really wanted to, stay uneducated. And I always tell my team the same thing. We don't know this, and we really need to learn every day, and every single chance that you get to learn something, you really learn it. And I completely converted my organization into a learning organization. Yeah. Cross-functionally, we learn, and even if you come to my office, they are all together. There's no departments. There's only 2 departments in the organization. Either you sell or you support to sell. Either you sell a coffee out of the counter or you support to sell a coffee out of the counter. There's no marketing, there's no HR, there's no, I mean, for, structure sake, yes, but everyone is no two things. Either I'm supporting to sell a coffee or either I sell a coffee. So the seller coffee are the outlet guys and the head office team is the support. So every time they feel that I'm not supporting to sell a coffee out, then they think that they're not doing a good job. So that is how it works. Now, if you talk to one of my marketing guys, he would say how the procurement is done. What is the price of an egg also right now, today? What is the price of a kilo of, coffee now? And what is the crisis that we are going through to find milk? That will be told by my HR guy. That's a kind of communication, very open communication that we have. Franchise, to answer that question, that is how Barista is operating.
Okay, wow, that was a very inspiring note on which we can now wrap up things actually, because we're almost running out of time. But I think you've shared with us so many delightful insights and perspectives about learning. In fact, Dilupa, we have somebody here who has a message for you, and he's saying, he says, thank you, Dilupa, for making me realize that despite all of the graduate and postgraduate achievements I've got up till my mid-20s, I've missed the most important lesson, which is the art of learning new knowledge. So I think you really drove that home today, that, the art of learning new knowledge, despite what you learned at school, you have to keep learning and unlearning. And I think someone else here really likes your honesty, that you don't like coffee. You've been honest about it. And I think you've been honest throughout the entire conversation, honest and humble and very ready to share what you have learned over the years. So before we wrap up this interview, Dilupa, would you have any final words, a final message that you would like to share with everybody?
I think everything's been said. Since this is a pick a book session and it's about reading, I will go back to what I said before, how I started this conversation. If you can read letters, it is your, I don't know, I can't use the word, it's your duty to read because you are privileged. I mean, I don't see any, I have seen in my university, they have a blind student. They have a blind student who was reading with so much of difficulty. You don't know how difficult for them to read things, right? And also we used to, in our university, we used to read books for them. We went to the library and their textbook, we read it out. And then we tape into cassettes and we gave it to them so they listen. There's so much difficulty without eyes. They still learned, they got degrees. And you come and tell me that I can read, I have good eyesight, I can't read. A guy who reads lives 1,000 lives before he dies, 1,000 lives. And I'm pretty sure that I am almost like 300 now. I have another 700 to cover. But if you don't read, you decide, right? You decide. So my decision, my only thing to everyone, like we have, 14, just let's start reading, and that will definitely bring you more knowledge and it will make you more humble. I'm telling you that one, right? The reading will make you humble because you will understand how beautifully people have thought about very little things. When you read literature, you will find a very little incident was beautifully articulated and you would never think, like you have seen thousands of incidents like that, but you have just unnoticed. But there are little things that human beings, how beautifully they have written and how beautiful hearts they have. Think about even songs. Think about lyrics of the songs. I read lyrics also. Very simple things, how beautiful they have seen. And then it will realize you what a boring and what a dry life probably living. And you think I know it all when you have a degree, when you have MBA, when you have masters, when you have, chartered accounting, chartered marketing fellowship, and when you are probably a CEO. But every time I think, wow, who am I? Right? So much of good things, so much of beautiful things that I missed in my life. Right? So I think that is my last thing. If you can read, if you have eyesight, just go and read.
Wow, that was a great ending, I think, a very inspiring, very encouraging note on which we can now wrap up this conversation. You've shared so many interesting things with us. You've inspired us all to learn, to unlearn, and to continue to, try learning from a variety of disciplines, not just what you have been taught at university. So I think plenty of us on this call have a lot to take away. So thank you, Dilupa, for sharing with us so many gems of wisdom. Thank you for sharing, your perspective as the head of Barista Lanka here, in our island. And we really appreciate you spending your time, your Valentine's Day evening with us to share with us your love for learning and for reading. So thank you once again on behalf of Pick a Book.
Thank you so much. Pleasure is mine. Thank you.
Fantastic. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I can see the comments coming in saying that it was so inspirational, and you're thanking Dilupa, you're sharing about, thank you for sharing your thoughts about reading and the experiences you've got. So thank you to the lovely audience that has joined us here for actively participating with your questions and with your comments. I hope that this was worth your Valentine's Day evening. And I do hope you have plenty of more love to follow this up with for the rest of the evening as well. So on that note, on that very loving note from us, thank you for joining us at this session of Why I Read, brought to you by Pick a Book. Take your love for learning and reading much higher and much broader. And hopefully we'll see you at another session of Why I Read right here at Pick a Book. Thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you, Tishu. Thank you so much.